Mm-hmm.
Okay. Day 17. Can you hear it? Okay. We'll wait till 8 o'clock. Still too cloudy to see the new moon. But we know she's there.
עמדתי בין קודש לחול, חטאותינו ימחו. עמדתי בין קודש לחול, חטאותינו ימחו. לכבודכם בת לבבי, אליהו הנביא. לכבודכם בת לבבי, אליהו הנביא. Yediyahu Hanavi Lichvodechem Dad Levavi Yediyahu Hanavi
Few more minutes.
New moon.
New one.
Shalom Aleichem Malachi Asharim Malachi Elyon Malachi Harachamim Mi Melech Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ruachem L'Shalom Malachi HaShalom Malachi Elyon Malachi Harachamim Mi Melech Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Baruchuni L'Shalom Malachi HaShalom Malachi Elyon Malachi Harachamim Mi Melech Malachi HaMelachim Lishalom, toward peace. Always lishalom, toward peace. As if it's an aspiration, a dream, a blessing, a prayer. Seitachem shalom. Come in, leave blessed, be blessed. Malachi shalom. Malachi Elyon. Malachi Harachamim. Mi Melech Malachi HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu
We hope everyone's had a peaceful Shabbat, a Shabbat of soul renewal. Shabbat, where this gift of time has given us a chance to renew our souls. And now it's time to let go of the sacred time of Shabbat with the blessings of Havdalah, where we make distinctions. We recognize the difference in time and space, the separations that somehow can help us to feel a little closer. So we have blessings over the wine for joy, over the spices to renew our soul, maybe to bring a little bit of the sweetness. I hope there's been some sweetness today. The spices we carry with us until next Shabbat. Hopefully we'll carry a little bit of that sweetness with us. And then, of course, the fire and the light. I think that makes so much noise. Somebody let us know if you can hear the dogs. Can you hear the dogs? Is that too much noise in the background? Is anybody there? Can you hear us?
It's pleasant.
Okay. And then, of course, we make the prayers of separation. And then we pray for Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, to come and bless us and give us what we need to get from the hope that we need to get from this Shabbat to the next. So should we sing the blessings? Yeah. Great. I wonder, could someone just send us a text and let us know that you can hear, that you're there? Okay. Chewing on bones, Alyssa. Thank you. Great. Thank you. I guess it's okay. Guess they're not barking.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Uri b'ri hagafen Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Uri b'nei b'sami
For your spices.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Uri b'yorei ha'ir Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamavdi ben kodesh lechol לכבודכם דר לבבי ידיעהו הנביא המבדיל בין קודש לחול חטאותינו ימחו לכבודכם דת לבבי ידיעהו הנביא
Before we lose the fire and sing Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, in to herald the time of Yamei Mashiach, the days of peace. A little story about Elijah, Eliyahu, and Elisha, his student. The book of Kings teaches us about the last earthly days of Elijah. And it came to pass that when the God of Israel chose to recall the prophet Elijah in a tempest of fire, Elijah and Elisha set out from Gilgal. This was to be their last journey together, and they both were so aware that they knew that this would be the last time that they would be in this world together. They talked little, each lost in his own thoughts. Eliyahu, Elijah the master, and Elisha, his disciple, had been so close, their imminent separation could only sharpen their sense of loss and suffering. What would become of each alone without the other? 3 times on their journey, Elijah, usually so angry, so stern, so harsh, shows unusual compassion for his student, his disciple, Elisha. Anticipating a difficult end for himself, he seeks to spare his disciple from the sight of his suffering and destruction. And so 3 times, Elisha insists on going forward with him, even though he tells him to stay behind. Finally, at the shores of the Jordan, just past Jericho, Elijah, moments away from his earthly end, says, "What would you wish me to attain for you?" Elisha thinks and says, "I would like my powers to be twice as great as yours." Afraid for his young friend, but realizing they had gone too far to turn back, Elijah says, "Listen, and listen well. If you will actually see me go into the fire, then you will know that your wish will be granted." And then it happened. While they were walking in mid-sentence, a chariot of fire descended from heaven, and Elijah was seized and swept away. In an instant, Elisha found himself alone, but he had seen it all, and Elijah, taken in a whirlwind of flames, was gone. Elisha called out in pain, a cry that shook the universe to its foundations for what he saw, but no answer was to be heard, no echo, nothing. Elijah was gone. So what's the point of the story? Elisha stayed with his teacher until the very end. He kept his eyes open during the suffering. He felt the pain of his loss and received, for all of that, a great blessing, twice the powers of even the great Elijah. Elisha had many opportunities to stay behind, to avoid the awful scene, but because he was a prophet, I guess, and spiritually alive with his eyes open, he could not deny what was going on, and he had to be part of the reality around him. He suspected that he couldn't change what was going to happen to Elijah, but he was going to be with him just in case. He would not let his own personal comfort or fears get in the way of doing the right thing and being there for his teacher. Making sure that the gifts of prophecy and healing would be passed on to him so he could continue Elijah's holy work. Now, these are the obvious observations, but I wonder in some way if Elisha's bold act also caused the great abyss between this world and the next, that great separation between the way things are and the way they could be, to be bridged in that moment. Because Elijah does not die. He returns in every generation, and he roams the earth, helping us pave the way for the days of the Messiah, the days of peace. He comes back again and again in many different forms to keep us hoping and believing, even in the times of our greatest doubt and despair. In our tradition, Elijah is the one who makes it possible to still believe in the good in the midst of a broken world. Elijah's presence keeps our hope alive, no matter where we have settled, in places where we have been persecuted and exiled, hated and tortured. The possibility of Elijah's presence gives us strength to carry on and the faith that one day he would bring messianic redemption. It allows us to carry on with uncertainty, knowing that he can pop up at any moment. We can also count on him to be there at every circumcision, at every Passover Seder. Most often the stories of Elijah coming are of a pathetic-looking guest, dressed in tattered clothes, showing up at Shabbat tables as a guest that we must welcome. It might be Elijah, we say, so we let in the beggar or the stranger. And then when he disappears, we realize that we have been left a great gift. I pray that Elijah is with us as we bridge the worlds that we are in now, helping us to keep our eyes open to the frightening fires, the plague around us, that we may bring to them the hope and the promise of peace that fills the teachings, the prayers, and the celebrations of our tradition, like this one, Havdalah. Elijah's presence is the bridge, reminding us that we are not doing this alone, that he will be there helping to get us through this time, to resist hate. And we know that right now we're praying for the Muslim community after the destruction of the mosque, the Islamic Center in Cape Girardeau, from a hate crime. So we hope he will be there with us as we try to rebuild the mosque in Cape Girardeau, to do all the things that we need to do to get through this pandemic, to help the most vulnerable around us, to resist hate, to resist all of the things that will keep us from bridging the worlds. So look for Elijah, and like Elisha, we just may have twice the wisdom, twice the power of our teachers, and maybe even emerge from this terrible time ready to build a better, more compassionate, and more just world.
You know, I've been to the well of Elisha.
Mm-hmm.
The rose of Jericho, Vered Yericho.
Right.
She had papaya groves in Jericho. And one day, I was her driver. She took me to this well, and she had this big tool that opened up the well.
Yeah.
And she had jerry cans in her old Volvo. And she took out the jerry cans and she filled up the jerry cans with the water that came out of this old well. Right. And I said, Rose, what is this place? She says, this is the well of Elisha. Mm-hmm. And she says, I have friends in Jerusalem that asked me to bring them water from this place, because in the book of Kings it says they added salt to the water and it became healing waters. Right. So she says, I have friends in Jerusalem that asked me to fill up these jerry cans and to bring the water from Jericho to Jerusalem. And so we would stop there, just us two, and she would unlock the spigot, big old metal spigot, and pump the water from the well of Elisha, and we'd put it in the jerry cans, take it back to Jerusalem. Mm. Vered Yericho, the rose of Jericho. Yeah.
You know, in this past week's Torah portion, the Havtorah is about Naaman, the Syrian general who has this terrible leprosy, and he's really suffering. And his wife's slave or maidservant is a Hebrew. And she says, you know, he doesn't have to suffer so much. Go see Elisha. He has tremendous powers to heal. So she convinces her husband to listen to the Hebrew slave, and they travel to the prophet Elisha with all of his armies. And Elisha says, yeah, I can heal you. He said, go and dip into the well, into the waters that fill the Jordan from my well, and you will be healed. Well, he's furious. He's furious. He says, dip 7 times? That's what's going to cure me? And he gets so mad at him for giving him such a simple thing that he's ready to slaughter him. And his wife says, sweetheart, maybe just try that. If it doesn't work, then you can kill him. But he, and so he tries, and he dips 7 times in those healing waters, and he is healed. May we find those healing waters. May we find all of those things that we need to do to restore our hope and give us that holy chutzpah to do what we need to bring healing.
עוד יבוא משיח
בן דוד,
אליהו הנביא תשבי, אליהו הנביא יגיד עוד יבוא משיח בן דוד. We're always waiting, we're always waiting.
So we wish each other a Shavua Tov, a good week, and now we count. You do it. 17. And tonight we count the 17th day.
It's Tiferet in Tiferet, I think.
Tiferet and Tiferet. Oh, that's great.
I'm going to make the Holy Omer counting now. Sfirat HaOmer. The counting of the Omer, we're in the 3rd week of the Omer, the week of Tiferet. Beauty, all paths pass through beauty. And today we begin the Tiferet in Tiferet. The whole week is given over to the context of beauty. Every day, a different energy that works within the context of beauty. Tonight begins Tiferet in Tiferet, beauty within beauty, extra measure of beauty. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer. Blessed are you, eternal of the universe, made us holy with mitzvahs. We are counting the 17th day of the Omer, Tiferet within Tiferet, beauty within beauty, all paths pass through beauty. May it come to us for good. Have a good week. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you to all of you for coming into our home so that we could make Havdalah together, that we could count the Omer. And if anyone would like to help the people rebuild their mosque in Cape Girardeau, I have the address on my Facebook page, and hopefully by Monday we'll have all the information on the CRC website and Facebook page as well. So a good week, a week of peace, a week of good health, a week of compassion and kindness. And we are in Tiferet, so a week of much beauty. Amen. Bye.